The sun had barely crested the horizon, casting a soft glow that bathed the skyscrapers of New York City in a golden light. In the quiet of the early morning, Central Park was a serene oasis, its paths winding like veins through the lush greenery. Sarah Thompson, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, jogged along these paths, her breath misting in the cool air. As an urban archaeologist, she found these runs meditative, a way to prepare for days often spent in the less picturesque parts of the city, digging through layers of civilization. As she rounded the bend near the Bethesda fountain, the ground trembled subtly beneath her feet. Startled, Sarah paused, her brow furrowing as she scanned her surroundings. The tremor was slight, but unmistakable, a brief whisper of the city's deeper stirrings. She considered the vibrations of subway trains or perhaps a distant construction site. Such were the mundane explanations that usually sufficed. Yet, as she resumed her run, a thread of curiosity unwound within her. The city, with all its buried secrets, sometimes seemed to communicate in these subtle shifts. Unbeknownst to Sarah, across the park at the Great Lawn, the earth had chosen a dramatic revelation. Without warning, the ground split open, a gaping maw that yawned wide in the dawn light, swallowing benches and trees alike. The chasm was immense, cutting a swath through the park's heart, its depths shrouded in shadow and mystery. By the time Sarah completed her loop and returned home, the news had already begun to ripple across the city. Her phone buzzed relentlessly on the kitchen counter, texts and notifications lighting up the screen. She grabbed the device, thumbing through the messages, each one escalating in urgency. The most pressing was from her colleague at the Museum of Natural History. "Huge sinkhole in Central Park. Looks like your kind of thing. They're calling for experts." Heart racing with a mix of adrenaline and professional zeal, Sarah responded swiftly, her earlier curiosity now aflame with purpose. She showered quickly, changed into her work attire, a pair of rugged jeans and a sturdy field jacket, and grabbed her gear bag, already packed with the tools of her trade. Driving to the site, Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. Natural sinkholes were rare in the city's geology. Could this be the result of some ancient structure's collapse? Or perhaps something more recent had undermined the ground? The historian in her thrived on such mysteries, each potential answer a thread in the broader tapestry of New York's storied past. Upon arriving, Sarah was greeted by a scene of controlled chaos. Barricades were already up, and police officers directed the swelling crowd of onlookers and morning commuters. She flashed her credentials to the officer in charge and was quickly ushered through. Standing at the precipice, Sarah looked down into the abyss. The air was cooler, a breath from the depths rising to meet the morning sun. The sinkhole was not merely a break in the earth, it was a portal, an invitation. As she set up her equipment, her thoughts wandered to the countless feet that had trodden the park above, oblivious to the hollows beneath. What stories lay in the dark below, she wondered, waiting for the light of discovery. Drawing a deep breath, Sarah prepared to descend into the depths. Today, the city had unveiled a new chapter of its history, and she would be the one to read it aloud. As she rappelled down, her thoughts were clear, focused. This was her element, the unknown her arena, and each finding below a potential key to the past's locked doors. The first beams of daylight slipped into the gaping chasm as Sarah descended, her headlamp casting a halo of light against the ancient walls that seemed to pulse with untold stories. Below, the air grew cooler and earthier, a stark contrast to the crisp morning she had left above. The rope creaked slightly under her weight, a constant reminder of the divide between the city she knew and the hidden depths she was entering. As her boots finally touched the ground, a vast cavern unfolded before her. The beam of her headlamp danced across surfaces, revealing intricate carvings and the remnants of structures carved directly into the earth. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she realized she wasn't just standing in a geological anomaly. She was standing in history, a living, breathing relic of a time long forgotten. She unhooked herself from the rappelling gear and took a tentative step forward, her boots crunching softly on the gravel. The silence of the cavern was profound, broken only by the distant drip of water. "This is more than I ever imagined," she whispered to herself, her voice a small echo in the vast emptiness. Pulling a notebook from her jacket, Sarah began to sketch the nearest carvings. They depicted scenes of life, people gathering, hunting, and celebrating, each figure meticulously detailed, telling stories of a community that once thrived beneath the earth's surface. "Who were you?" she pondered, tracing her fingers over the cool stone. "And what led you to build beneath the city?" Her exploration took her deeper into the cavern. Here, structures became more pronounced, remnants of homes, public spaces, and what appeared to be a central square. Each discovery sent a thrill through her, the historian within piecing together the civilization that had mastered the underground. Suddenly, her light caught something unusual. It wasn't the age-old rock or carvings, but something far more modern, a series of metal stakes and nylon ropes, signs of recent human activity. "Victor," she muttered under her breath, the name leaving a bitter taste. She knew Victor Dane's interest in the site was piqued, and these markers were a stark sign of his intentions. As she continued her survey, her thoughts turned to the potential confrontation ahead. Victor was influential, with resources that dwarfed her own. Her findings needed to be compelling enough to sway public opinion and the authorities. Each photo she took, every sample she collected, could be crucial evidence to protect this place. Near what she surmised to be the center of the underground city, Sarah found a large, flat stone. It was different from the rest, smoother and with a series of what appeared to be intentional indentations. Kneeling beside it, she ran her hands over the surface, feeling the dips and grooves. Her light traced the pattern, and realization dawned: it was a map. A map of the city as it once was, laid out with meticulous care. "This changes everything," Sarah thought, her heart pounding with the significance of her discovery. "This isn't just a site, it's a message, a legacy left by those who called this place home." Her camera clicked repeatedly as she documented the find, knowing the importance of each image. With evidence like this, she could build a case not just for preservation but for reverence, a plea to recognize and respect the history beneath their feet. As the day wore on, Sarah prepared to ascend back to the surface. Her mind was a whirlwind of plans and possibilities, ready to defend her newfound world. She looked around once more, imprinting the site into her memory. "I'll be back," she promised the silent stones. "And next time, I'll bring the world with me." Climbing out of the depths, Sarah emerged into the daylight, the sounds of the bustling city abruptly enveloping her. The contrast between the ancient quiet below and the modern chaos above was jarring, yet it fueled her resolve. This hidden city wouldn't remain a secret for much longer, not if she had anything to say about it. Emerging from the depths of Central Park, Sarah squinted against the harshness of the noon sun. The world above seemed almost alien after hours spent in the muted whispers of an ancient city. She pulled off her helmet, letting the light breeze play through her hair, trying to reconcile the serene history below with the clamorous present. As she stowed her gear, her phone buzzed with a message from the Museum of Natural History. It was a summons to a meeting with city officials and potential stakeholders. The text was terse, but the implication clear: the battle for the future of the underground city was about to begin. Driving to the museum, Sarah rehearsed her arguments. The discovery wasn't just a marvel of archaeology. It was a cultural treasure that needed protection from commercial exploitation. She envisioned the underground city as a public site that could educate and inspire, not as another parcel to be developed. The conference room at the museum buzzed with low conversations as Sarah entered. Among the gathered crowd, she spotted Victor Dane's imposing figure, his presence like a dark cloud looming over the gathering. His smile was all charm, but his eyes were calculating, missing nothing. The meeting was called to order, and Sarah listened as city planners and officials outlined the situation. The sinkhole was a safety hazard, a public relations issue, and a potential gold mine for tourism and development. Each speaker seemed to echo Victor's sentiment. There was much to gain from quick action. When it was her turn to speak, Sarah stood, her palms damp but her voice steady. "This site is not just a sudden gap in the earth," she began, clicking her presentation to life. Images of the carvings, the structures, and the map stone filled the screen. "It's a gateway to our past, holding stories that have survived beneath our feet, unnoticed until today." As she spoke, Sarah laid out her plan for the site: careful excavation, preservation, and eventually, a museum that incorporated the underground city into its design. "We have a chance to give history a voice," she argued. "Let's not drown it out with the rush towards commercial gain." Victor rose after her, clapping slowly. "Inspiring, really," he said, his voice oozing faux admiration. "But let's be practical. The city needs revenue, and this," he gestured dismissively at Sarah's presentation, "is prime real estate. Why not make history work for us? Imagine a themed attraction here, with the past as its backdrop." The room buzzed with mixed reactions. Sarah could feel the pull of Victor's vision tugging at the more financially minded officials. The ease of profit often outweighed the patience required for preservation. As the debate continued, Sarah's thoughts churned. How could she convince them that some things were worth more than money? Her eyes met those of an older gentleman in the back, a professor emeritus she recognized from the university. His slight nod gave her a sliver of hope. There were allies here, not just adversaries. The meeting adjourned with no decision made, but the lines were clearly drawn. Victor approached her as the room cleared, his smile thin and sharp. "You're quite the idealist, Sarah," he said. "But this city runs on pragmatism. I'd hate to see your passion wasted." Sarah met his gaze, her resolve hardening. "And I'd hate to see history bulldozed for the sake of another high-rise," she countered. As she left the room, her mind raced with the next steps. She needed more than just passion and photographs. She needed tangible proof that the site held significant historical value, perhaps even something that could sway public opinion in her favor. Driving back to her office, Sarah's thoughts kept returning to the underground map stone. There was a story there, a piece of the puzzle that could change everything. She just needed to decipher it. "I'll bring the world with me," she whispered to herself, a promise made not just to the silent stones but to the city above them. The fight for the past was just beginning, and Sarah was ready to lead the charge. Back in her office at the museum, Sarah was surrounded by piles of research papers, books on ancient civilizations, and high-resolution images of the artifacts and carvings she had captured in the underground city. The walls were plastered with enlarged photos of the map stone, each section annotated with her initial interpretations. She sat, a lone figure amidst the clutter, her gaze fixed on the intricate details of the ancient city's layout, as depicted by the stone. She reached for her phone and dialed Dr. Alan Hoffman, the professor emeritus who had nodded to her during the meeting. He was an expert in ancient urban planning and might shed light on the map's significance. The phone rang twice before a warm, slightly weary voice answered. "Sarah, I saw your presentation," Dr. Hoffman began without preamble. "Impressive discovery. How can I help?" "Alan, I need your expertise to decode this map," Sarah replied, her voice threaded with urgency. "There's more to it than just city planning. I believe it contains keys to understanding the civilization's culture and possibly their reasons for building underground." "Send me the images," Dr. Hoffman instructed. "I'll look over them tonight. We need solid academic backing to support your case for preservation." Grateful, Sarah hung up and turned back to her computer, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she composed an email attaching all relevant files. She knew that academic validation was crucial, but she also needed public support. She pondered her next steps, tapping her pen against her lips thoughtfully. The idea struck her suddenly, and with it a rush of adrenaline. She would organize a public exhibit, even a small one, showcasing replicas of the artifacts and photos of the carvings and the map. If she could evoke a sense of wonder and historical importance among the people of New York, perhaps public opinion could pressure the officials to prioritize preservation. The next few days were a blur of activity. Sarah collaborated with the museum's exhibit designers, pulling in favors to expedite the process. She reached out to local news outlets, pitching the story of the underground city as a mysterious chapter in New York's history that had come to light, literally, from beneath their feet. Meanwhile, Dr. Hoffman worked on the map, his emails coming at all hours as he pieced together the layout and its possible meanings. His findings were encouraging. The map didn't just depict buildings. It showed ceremonial paths and possibly astronomical alignments, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of both urban design and celestial events. Sarah, this city was significant, not a mere settlement. It was planned with purpose, Dr. Hoffman explained during one of their late-night phone calls. We must argue that this site offers unique insights into urban and astronomical practices that are unprecedented for their time. Emboldened by these discoveries, Sarah finalized plans for the exhibit. As she surveyed the setup in a small gallery within the museum, her heart swelled with a mix of pride and nervous anticipation. The exhibit was simple but striking, with the mapstone replica as the centerpiece, surrounded by photographs and descriptions of the underground city's most intriguing features. On the day of the exhibit's opening, Sarah watched as people streamed in, their faces alight with curiosity. She overheard snippets of conversations, expressions of awe, thoughtful questions, debates about the implications of such a discovery beneath modern New York. She even spotted a few city officials among the crowd, their expressions thoughtful as they absorbed the information displayed. Victor Dane was conspicuously absent, but his presence was felt nonetheless. Sarah had learned through her contacts that he was rallying investors for his development project, promising a spectacle of history merged with modern entertainment. His vision of the past was commodified, a stark contrast to the educational and cultural reverence Sarah advocated. As the day drew to a close, Sarah stood by the replica of the mapstone, her eyes scanning the room. The exhibit had started a conversation, perhaps even a movement. People were beginning to see the underground city not just as a curiosity, but as a cultural heritage that deserved to be protected. She knew the battle was far from over, but as she watched a young girl trace the map's lines with awe, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose. We're not just fighting for history, she thought. We're fighting for the future's right to understand its past. With the public's imagination captured, Sarah prepared for the next phase of her campaign. She was ready to confront the city's decision-makers, armed with evidence, public support, and a resolute belief in the value of preservation. The storm was gathering, and Sarah was at its heart, a calm yet formidable force advocating for the voice of history. The success of the exhibit had sparked a flame of interest and debate across New York, and Sarah felt the momentum of public opinion beginning to shift. Yet, as she gathered her materials and prepared for the next round of meetings with city officials, she was acutely aware that Victor Dane's influence was a formidable barrier. He had deep pockets and a vision that aligned too conveniently with the city's financial interests. In the days following the exhibit, Sarah intensified her efforts. She met with community leaders, historians, and even school groups, anyone who could help spread the word about the significance of the underground city. She gave interviews to local journalists, emphasizing the potential loss not just of history but of a unique educational resource. Each conversation was a thread woven into a larger tapestry of community engagement and activism. One rainy evening, as Sarah reviewed her notes in her dimly lit office, her phone rang. It was James Keller, a city council member known for his advocacy for cultural heritage preservation. Sarah, I've been following your work on the underground city. It's caught quite a bit of attention. I think it's time we brought this discussion to a broader platform. How about a town hall meeting? Grateful for the opportunity, Sarah agreed enthusiastically. That sounds perfect, James. Let's set it up. We need to show the breadth of support for preserving this site. The town hall meeting was scheduled for the following week at a local community center. Sarah spent the intervening days preparing, gathering as much compelling evidence as she could muster. Dr. Hoffman sent over his latest research, a detailed analysis that suggested the underground city had been a major ceremonial center, a finding that underscored its historical significance. As the night of the town hall arrived, Sarah walked into the community center, her heart pounding with a mix of nervous energy and determination. The hall was packed, buzzing with the voices of hundreds of locals. Some were there out of curiosity, others were already passionate about the cause, and still, others were skeptics, drawn by the controversy and the prospect of witnessing a fiery debate. Sarah took the stage alongside James Keller and a panel of experts, including Dr. Hoffman. The walls behind them displayed images of the artifacts, the ancient carvings, and the map stone. Sarah opened the discussion with a compelling presentation, showing visuals from the exhibit and sharing insights from Dr. Hoffman's research. As you can see, the underground city is not merely an archaeological site. It is a cultural treasure, a glimpse into the life and spirituality of a people who walked these lands long before us. Sarah explained, her voice resonant in the crowded hall. The floor was then open for questions, and the discussion became lively. Residents expressed concerns about the impact of development on the local environment and the loss of public space. Teachers spoke about the educational value of the site. Even a few skeptics raised points about the economic benefits of development, giving Sarah the chance to address the broader implications of short-term gain versus long-term cultural loss. Victor Dane, ever the antagonist, made a surprise appearance, taking the microphone during the open forum. While I admire Dr. Thompson's passion, we must think practically about our city's growth and economy. Why not incorporate this cultural treasure into a development that can generate revenue and attract tourists? His tone was reasonable, but his eyes were cold, challenging. Sarah responded calmly but firmly. Victor, we risk losing the very essence of what makes this site special. It's not just about viewing the past behind glass. It's about preserving the context and integrity of history. We must protect it from exploitation. The debate continued, with the audience increasingly engaged. When the meeting concluded, there was a palpable sense of community resolve to protect the underground city. Sarah felt a surge of hope, bolstered by the applause and the many attendees who lingered to thank her and offer their support. As the crowd dispersed, Sarah collected her materials, her mind already racing with the next steps. She had allies and the public's attention, but the real challenge lay ahead, converting this grassroots support into political action that could halt Victor's plans. Leaving the community center, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. The battle lines were drawn, not just in the halls of power but in the hearts of the city's residents. She was no longer a lone archaeologist fighting for her cause. She was a leader in a growing movement to preserve a piece of the world's heritage. The storm was gathering, and Sarah was ready to stand at its eye, whatever it might bring. In the aftermath of the town hall meeting, the corridors of power in New York City hummed with whispered debates and closed-door discussions. Sarah's campaign had ignited a citywide conversation that was now impossible to ignore. However, Victor Dane's countermoves were swift and calculated. He intensified his lobbying, using his connections and financial clout to push for an expedited development plan. Aware of the ticking clock, Sarah organized her strategy around two main fronts: legal and scientific. She knew that bolstering her case with undeniable academic evidence was crucial, but she also needed to navigate the labyrinth of city regulations and heritage preservation laws. Early one morning, Sarah met with a team of lawyers specializing in environmental and heritage law. Together, they pored over maps, legal documents, and the city's zoning regulations. "We need to find a loophole or a precedent that can help us stall or block Victor's plans," Sarah explained, her eyes scanning the documents. "There has to be something here that protects such a significant archaeological discovery." Meanwhile, Dr. Hoffman and a small team of archaeologists continued their detailed analysis of the underground city. They had uncovered evidence of an advanced water management system and unique architectural techniques that were revolutionary for their time. Sarah, this city wasn't just a place to live, it was a pinnacle of engineering and spiritual significance. Dr. Hoffman explained over a video call, his face animated with excitement. These findings are extraordinary. They could change the understanding of early urban development in the region. As Sarah absorbed this information, her resolve deepened. She compiled the new research into a compelling dossier and planned to present it at the next city council meeting, which was crucial for the approval of Victor's development proposal. The meeting was only days away, and the pressure was mounting. The day before the council meeting, Sarah received a tip from an insider in the city planner's office. Victor is planning to present a revised proposal tomorrow. He's added a cultural pavilion to his development plan, claiming it will showcase artifacts from the site, the informant disclosed cautiously. This news was a tactical maneuver that Sarah had feared. Victor was clever, framing his commercial development as a benefit to the city's cultural landscape. She spent the night strategizing, revising her presentation to counter Victor's proposal directly. The council chamber was packed the next day, the air thick with anticipation. Victor presented first, unveiling slick architectural renderings of a modern complex complete with a glass-domed structure he called the Cultural Pavilion. This will not only preserve but also enhance the visibility of our city's ancient history, Victor proclaimed, his voice echoing confidently through the room. When it was her turn, Sarah approached the podium, her notes organized, her mind focused. She began by acknowledging the allure of Victor's proposal but quickly pivoted to the heart of her argument. What value is visibility if it's stripped of authenticity? She challenged the council. Our findings show that the underground city is not just a collection of artifacts, it's a testament to a civilization's ingenuity and spirit. Placing it within a commercial complex would irreversibly damage its integrity. Sarah presented the new archaeological findings with precision, each slide a testament to the site's importance. Dr. Hoffman joined her, providing expert testimony on the uniqueness of the architectural and engineering techniques discovered. As the debate opened, the council members weighed the options. The room buzzed with discussions, questions, and whispered deliberations. Sarah watched, her heart a tight knot in her chest, as each council member seemed to wrestle with the decision. Finally, the council chair called for a vote. The tension in the room was palpable as hands raised in succession. Sarah held her breath, counting each vote, her career and her passion for history hanging in the balance. The vote was closer than anyone had expected, a testament to the compelling nature of both arguments. As the chair announced the results, Sarah felt a moment of weightless disbelief. The council had decided to delay Victor's proposal, calling for a more thorough investigation into the archaeological significance of the site. Relief washed over Sarah as she left the chamber. The battle was far from over, but they had one crucial time to further their research and strengthen their case. As she stepped into the sunlight, the city seemed to pulse around her, a vibrant reminder of the living history she was fighting to protect. The decision to delay Victor's proposal had granted Sarah a vital reprieve, but the war was far from won. As the evening sun dipped below the horizon, painting the New York skyline in hues of orange and purple, Sarah sat in her office surrounded by piles of research papers and artifacts. The walls were plastered with enlarged photographs of the underground city, each annotated with meticulous detail. Her office had become a war room. Maps of the site were spread across her desk, tagged with notes on legal strategies and historical significance. As she reviewed the data, her phone buzzed, a reminder of a scheduled video call with her legal team. She clicked on the link, and faces filled her screen, each one set in a mask of determination. We've bought some time, but Victor will be regrouping. We need to be proactive. Sarah started, her voice steady despite the fatigue that edged its tone. Any progress on finding a historical preservation statute or a precedent that might help our cause? One of the lawyers, a sharp-eyed woman named Elaine, responded. We're close, Sarah. There's a case from 1987 where a development was halted due to its site having historical significance tied to the city's maritime history. It's not a perfect match, but it shows there's a pathway for us. Good, keep digging. Anything you find could be crucial, Sarah replied, scribbling notes. What about public support? Any movements there? Another lawyer, Tom, chimed in. The public response has been overwhelming. Petitions are circulating, and local media are on your side. There's a rally planned for next week outside City Hall. It should keep the pressure on the council members. As the call wrapped up, Sarah leaned back in her chair, her thoughts racing. Every piece of support mattered, but it was the scientific validation of the site's importance that would be the linchpin. She glanced at the clock. Time for her final appointment of the day with Dr. Hoffman and the archaeology team. The video call with Dr. Hoffman was brief but intense. We've made another breakthrough, he reported, his eyes gleaming with excitement even through the screen. We found inscriptions that might be linked to astronomical phenomena. They could indicate that this site was not just a city but a significant cultural center for celestial events. Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline at the news. That's fantastic, Alan. Can we get those findings peer-reviewed and published quickly? It's already in process, Dr. Hoffman assured her. We're fast-tracking everything without compromising the integrity of the research. You'll have a draft by tomorrow. After ending the call, Sarah stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city that never sleeps. The lights of New York twinkled back at her, each one a reminder of the bustling life above and the silent history below. This city is built on layers of the past, she mused aloud. And I'm not about to let one of those layers be erased for profit. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Sarah arrived at the museum early, greeted by her team who had been working overnight to prepare the new findings for presentation. Together, they reviewed the information, ensuring every detail was accurate and every conclusion well supported. By midday, a courier delivered the printed copies of Dr. Hoffman's report. Sarah thumbed through the document, feeling the weight of their discoveries in her hands. This was more than just evidence. It was a testament to a civilization that had looked to the stars and engineered marvels beneath the earth. With the report in her briefcase, Sarah prepared to head to the rally at City Hall. Today, she wouldn't just be fighting for the past, she would be advocating for a future where history and progress coexisted. As she stepped out into the crisp air, her resolve was ironclad. Tonight she would rest, but tomorrow she would battle not just for history, but for the very soul of her city. The night before the dawn was always the darkest, and Sarah was ready to bring the light. Sarah approached City Hall with a determined stride, her briefcase heavy with the weight of history. The crisp morning air was charged with anticipation as crowds gathered, banners waving, voices melding into a chorus of support for the preservation of the underground city. The rally outside was a vibrant tapestry of concerned citizens, students, historians, and activists, all united by Sarah's cause. Inside City Hall, the atmosphere was a stark contrast. The corridors echoed with the hushed tones of impending confrontation. Today, the council would make a decision that could alter the fabric of New York's historical landscape. Sarah's heart pounded with the gravity of the moment, but her resolve was as solid as the ancient stones she fought to protect. As she entered the council chamber, Sarah scanned the room. The members were settling into their seats, papers shuffling, murmurs fading as the chair called the session to order. Victor Dane was already there, exuding a calm demeanor, his team arrayed behind him like a well-dressed phalanx prepared for battle. Sarah took her seat, her eyes briefly meeting Victor's. There was a flash of acknowledgement, a warrior's respect for a worthy opponent, before both turned their attention to the council. The chairperson laid out the day's agenda, the room hanging on every word. We will first hear from Miss Sarah Thompson, representing the historical significance of the archaeological site discovered beneath Central Park. Following her presentation, Mr. Victor Dane will outline his revised development proposal. Sarah rose, her movements deliberate. As she approached the podium, she felt the weight of countless generations bearing down upon her, lending her strength. She arranged her notes and adjusted the microphone. "Council members, esteemed colleagues, and citizens of New York," she began, her voice echoing in the chamber. "Today we stand at a crossroads between erasing a chapter of our city's history or preserving it for future generations." She clicked her remote, and images of the underground city filled the screen behind her. Vivid photographs and 3D renderings of the architectural marvels and celestial alignments. This isn't merely about saving relics. This is about acknowledging that beneath our bustling streets lies a narrative that could redefine our understanding of the past. Sarah detailed the recent findings, the astronomical inscriptions linking the city to celestial phenomena, illustrating a society that had looked to the stars to shape their world. To destroy such a site for the sake of commercial development is to deny our city's rich, layered identity, she argued passionately. After presenting the compelling evidence, Sarah stepped back, her gaze sweeping across the room, challenging the council to make the right choice. Victor took the podium next, his charm palpable as he greeted the council. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began smoothly, "while I respect Miss Thompson's passion, we must also consider the future." He unveiled a dazzling virtual tour of his proposed development, complete with a cultural pavilion that promised to attract tourists and revenue. "The past and the future can coexist," Victor claimed, presenting a world where history was packaged within sleek, modern walls. His proposal was persuasive, designed to appeal to both the economic aspirations and cultural pride of the city. The council members whispered among themselves, clearly torn between the two visions. As the debate kicked off, questions flew, probing both Sarah and Victor, their responses sharp and calculated. Outside, the rally's chants filtered through the chamber windows, a reminder of the public's watchful eye and vested interest in the outcome. Sarah listened to each council member's concerns, her mind racing, formulating responses that reinforced the significance of preservation over profit. As the session drew to a close, the chair called for a final round of remarks. Sarah stood once more, her voice steady but charged with emotion. "To choose development over preservation is to prioritize temporary gain over permanent enlightenment. Let us not be remembered as the generation who sold our heritage for convenience." The council recessed to deliberate, leaving a tense silence hanging over the chamber. Sarah, Victor, and the audience waited, the air thick with anticipation. After what felt like an eternity, the council returned. The chairperson stood, the room falling silent. "After careful consideration, the council has decided to deny the development proposal," she announced, "and will move forward with establishing the site as a historical landmark." A wave of relief and triumph washed over Sarah as the chamber erupted in applause. Victor's face was stoic, his disappointment masked behind a courteous nod. As Sarah exited City Hall, the crowd outside cheered, their voices a cascade of victory. She was swamped with congratulations, her heart swelling with pride, not just for herself, but for the city that had chosen to honor its past. The battle was won, but Sarah knew the journey to preserve the site was just beginning. Tonight, they celebrated. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The underground city had been saved, its secrets ready to whisper their stories to those willing to listen. The celebration that evening was not just a victory party. It was a jubilant declaration of the city's commitment to its past. Held in a grand hall near the museum, the event drew supporters from all walks of life: academics, locals who had followed the saga, city officials who had voted in favor of preservation, and even a few who had been on the fence but were moved by Sarah's impassioned plea. As Sarah entered the hall, a spontaneous round of applause broke out, and she was swept up in a tide of congratulations. Glasses clinked and people laughed, the room buzzing with the collective relief and joy of a community that had come together to protect something invaluable. Sarah found herself surrounded by friends and allies, her heart full as she reflected on the journey. "Tonight, we celebrate not just a victory for history but for our future," Sarah said, raising her glass in a toast. The crowd echoed her sentiment, their voices a harmonious blend in the grand tapestry of the evening. As the celebration wound down, Sarah felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Victor Dane standing behind her, his expression one of respectful concession. "Sarah, you fought well," he said, extending his hand. "I underestimated the power of your conviction." Sarah shook his hand, noting the genuine respect in his eyes. "Thank you, Victor. I hope this is a turning point for us all, to recognize the value of what lies beneath as much as what we build above." Victor nodded, a thoughtful look crossing his face as he glanced around the room at the jubilant crowd. "Perhaps there's more to history than I gave it credit for. We'll see how the city grows from here," he conceded, before excusing himself, leaving Sarah to ponder his words. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. With the site officially designated as a historical landmark, Sarah spearheaded the efforts to plan its future. Meetings were held with architects, historians, and the city's planning department to discuss the integration of the underground city into New York's cultural and educational fabric. One sunny afternoon, Sarah walked the site with a group of architects and city planners. They discussed pathways for guided tours, educational programs, and interactive exhibits that could bring the history of the underground city to life without disturbing its integrity. "We could use augmented reality to show how the city would have looked in its heyday," suggested one architect, pointing to his tablet which displayed a vibrant, bustling ancient city superimposed over the serene ruins. Sarah nodded, excited by the possibilities. "Let's make sure whatever we do is reversible, to preserve the integrity of the site. It's not just a tourist attraction, it's a classroom, a bridge to our past." Progress was steady, and soon the underground city was ready to welcome its first visitors. The opening day was another milestone, marked by a ceremony attended by city dignitaries, historians, and the many people who had supported Sarah's campaign. As Sarah addressed the crowd, standing at the entrance to the underground city, she felt a profound connection to the countless generations that had walked these paths before her. "Today, we open not just a site, but a doorway to the past," she announced, her voice echoing slightly off the ancient stones. "Let us step through it with reverence and curiosity." The underground city became a living museum, a place of learning and wonder. School groups, tourists, and locals walked its paths, guided by plaques and virtual reconstructions that told the stories of its inhabitants and their astronomical achievements. For Sarah, the project was a dream realized, a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of preserving history. But beyond the concrete achievements, it was the change in the community's attitude towards their heritage that she cherished most. Standing by the entrance one evening, watching a group of children marvel at a holographic display of an ancient celestial alignment, Sarah felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The city above continued to pulse with life, its future now irrevocably intertwined with the stories of its past. The underground city whispered its secrets, and above, the city listened, its heartbeat a rhythmic echo of an ever-unfolding story. As autumn turned the leaves of Central Park into a mosaic of orange and gold, Sarah stood at the entrance of the underground city, now a cornerstone of cultural heritage in New York. The cool breeze carried with it the laughter and chatter of the day's last group of visitors, their faces alight with the thrill of discovery. Above, the modern city buzzed in its usual relentless rhythm, while below, its ancient counterpart spoke of stillness and timelessness. Sarah's role had evolved. No longer just a campaigner or archaeologist, she had become a guardian of this gateway to the past, ensuring that the stories unearthed were shared with reverence and integrity. Today, she was hosting a special tour for a group of international historians, her excitement palpable as she prepared to bridge worlds and epochs. As the group descended into the earth, The air grew cooler, and the modern city sounds faded into a hushed silence, broken only by Sarah's voice. Here, we see not just the foundations of a city but of a civilization that understood the cosmos in ways we are only beginning to appreciate, she explained, her words echoing lightly off the ancient stone walls. Their path was illuminated by gentle, unobtrusive lighting that highlighted the intricate carvings and stonework without disturbing the site's ambience. At a particularly well-preserved section, Sarah stopped. This panel depicts the lunar cycles, used by the ancients for both timekeeping and ceremonies. With our augmented reality apps, you can see how this place would have looked during such a celebration. She gestured to the group to activate their devices, and the ruins around them came alive with the holographic images of people gathering, the sounds of ancient music and festive chatter filling the air. The historians, seasoned scholars of the ancient world, were visibly moved, their usual reserve melting away as they were transported across millennia. As the tour continued, Sarah shared plans for further exploration and preservation. We're using non-invasive techniques to probe deeper into the city's layout. Every layer we uncover tells us more about the people who built this place, how they lived, their challenges, and their triumphs. Emerging back into the twilight, the group was quiet, reflective. One of the historians, an elderly gentleman from Greece, turned to Sarah. "You've done something remarkable here, Ms. Thompson. Not just preserving history, but making it a vibrant part of the present." Sarah smiled, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "Thank you. It's a responsibility and a privilege. We're not just keeping the past alive, we're letting it inform and enrich our future." That evening, as Sarah closed the gates, she took a moment to look back at the descending path. The site had become a focal point for community and education, hosting school children, academics, and tourists, each leaving with a deeper understanding of their collective heritage. The impact of the underground city extended beyond its physical boundaries. Inspired by the project's success, similar initiatives sprouted in other parts of the city and beyond, each a testament to the value of preserving history in an ever-accelerating world. Sarah's work also transformed into academic papers and presentations at global conferences, spreading the story of the underground city across continents, inspiring others to look beneath their feet and around them with new eyes. As she walked home through the park, her thoughts drifted to the countless untold stories still buried beneath the world's bustling streets, waiting for their time in the sun. The city above might never sleep, but the city below dreamt deeply, its dreams a chronicle of the ages. Back in her apartment, Sarah looked out over the New York skyline, a skyline that now held a deeper narrative, one of layers and legacies. She pondered the next chapter, both for the city and for herself. The underground city was just the beginning. The past had much more to say, and Sarah was ready to listen, to learn, and to share. In the quiet of her study, surrounded by her notes and artifacts, she began to draft her next project proposal, eager to dive back into the depths, to uncover more, to continue the dialogue between the ages. The city awaited, its heartbeat a steady, comforting rhythm beneath the cacophony of the present. Thank you for sharing a moment of your day with me. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Really helps a lot. If you don't, well, I'll still love you. Thanks for stopping by.